My name is Harper, a 42-year-old housewife working part-time. My husband Keith is 48 and works for a company. We have an 18-year-old daughter, Sophia, who is a high school student. Though we have been married for nearly 20 years, there has been a persistent tense atmosphere for quite a while. Back when Sophia was little, the three of us used to go out and play together a lot. However, since Sophia became a high school student, Keith started going out by himself more frequently. He has completely stopped getting involved in Sophia's school, events, or club activities. I have to drive Sophia, who was part of the badminton club, to tournaments and practice matches far away, but no matter how much I ask Keith, he always brushes me off, saying, "I'm busy with work. Looking after the child is the mother's job, isn't it?" Sophia, too, is astonished at her father's behavior. Other kids' fathers are enthusiastically coming to support, but our dad doesn't seem to care. It seems that Sophia isn't particularly fond of Keith, who never helps out with child rearing. He barely helps out with housework, but he always has complaints. Even when my part-time job gets busy and I come home late, Keith never prepares dinner. "What time do you think it is? I'm starving here!" "I work too, you know. You could at least prepare dinner." This way, we often end up arguing. Lately, Sophia has been helping with dinner preparations, which has been a great relief. The initial reason I started working part-time was because Keith asked me to. I had planned to start working when Sophia grew up to a certain extent, but Keith kept buying unnecessary things, so I started working again when Sophia was 1. Keith loves cars and is constantly buying new ones. He should buy a car within his earning capacity, but he can't do that. He is not high income, but he keeps buying expensive cars. Adding to that, Keith, who likes to show off, seems to often pay for his coworkers when they go drinking. "I treated everyone again today." He comes home drunk and talks about it with a smug face. Recently, there seem to be fewer drinking parties, so he seems to not be treating others as much. Still, he is always complaining about not having enough money. He works for a company that does not pay well, and he spends money without thinking. Ideally, I wanted to save money for Sophia's education and for buying our own house. Now, saving money is out of the question, and we are barely getting by, day to day. Keith's salary disappears with monthly rent, food expenses, and educational expenses. Most of my part-time income is used for the payments on the luxury car that Keith bought. A large minivan, a hybrid car, which is too big for a 3-person family. He decided to buy it without considering Sophia's or my opinion. Before this minivan, we had a gas-guzzling giant SUV. I got angry several times because of the car's poor fuel efficiency. Why do you, who never go to the mountains or the sea, need to buy such a car with such large tires? "I bought it because it's trendy now. It's okay even in heavy snow." We live in an area where it only snows about once every 5 years, so there was never a chance to use it in snowy conditions. When he bought the current minivan, he said, "This time it's a hybrid, so the fuel efficiency is good. Also, a lot of people can ride in a minivan." When Sophia was in junior high school, many of the parents of the badminton club members drove minivans. Sophia and I had a conversation about it. Indeed, a minivan can accommodate many people and even allow for changing clothes. It's nice. Our car is large, but the interior is cramped, isn't it? Perhaps my husband casually checks in on my conversation with our daughter, Sophia. And then there's my husband, who bought a sports car before the SUV. "It was a childhood dream of mine. It's every man's fantasy." Can't you wait until Sophia grows up? This car's child seat is a pain. "It's a car I can only drive now. We don't use the child seat every day, so it's okay." You might not mind since you won't be transporting Sophia, but it's hard for me. The 2-door car was difficult to use, and of course, the fuel economy was terrible. Sophia was still at an age where she needed a child seat or a baby seat, and getting in and out was difficult. If only my husband would consult me, but he decides on his own. He buys on impulse without thinking about the payment. I don't understand why he buys things he can't afford on his salary. In the end, I had to pay the loan with the money I earned from my part-time job. Every time, my hours at the part-time job get longer. When we bought the current minivan, my husband and I had a quarrel. Next time we buy a car, consult us too. You can't decide on your own. I should be the one to decide. I'm the one who drives it the most. You can decide, but at least let me know what kind of car it will be. That's all I ask. Okay, I understand. So next time I can decide if I consult with you first. At my husband's words, I started feeling anxious. You're not thinking of buying the next car already, are you? I don't know. I didn't say anything, did I? The word, I don't know, seemed unnatural. I'm paying almost all of the loans for the car you're driving with my part-time job earnings. I can't pay any more than this. I'm also paying for the down payment, my husband retorts, looking dissatisfied. It's not a down payment, it's the money from trading in the old car. Then it's the same as what I paid. It could be. My husband was overruled by me. About a month later, my husband brought up the topic, looking guilty. Actually, I bought a new car. I was so stunned that I didn't even feel angry. This time, it's an electric vehicle, so we don't need gasoline. With the current high gasoline prices, it's perfect. Electricity is expensive too. We don't have solar power. So are there any advantages to electric cars? It doesn't emit carbon dioxide, so it's good for the environment. I can't tell if he's just easily swayed by trends or if he's just doing what the car dealer tells him. It's too much. How much did you pay for it? A loan of $750 per month. I need your part-time job earnings again. If it's $750 a month, that's all of my part-time earnings. Do I have to work for your car? You'll be driving it too. Now that Sophia's club activities are over, I won't be using it. Now that our daughter, a high school senior, has retired from her club activities, she won't need the car anymore. I wanted to save my part-time earnings for her college education, but now my plan has been completely derailed. We need money for Sophia's college education too. Is it okay to buy such an expensive car? Are you okay? He asks me back. Sure enough, due to the recent incident, I started to harbor doubts towards my husband. Am I really okay living with this man? I am filled with uncertainty. He doesn't consider Sophia's college expenses or our retirement funds at all. I want to discuss it with someone, but my parents are no longer around. I don't want to worry Sophia, so I can't talk to her. At that moment, I remember a senior from work. He got divorced a few years ago and is now single-handedly raising 2 children. Despite being my junior by a couple of years, they perform better than other employees. I'm not considering a divorce yet, but I want to consult him. The next day during lunch, I had him listen to my story. After hearing my situation, the senior said, I had small children, and my wife didn't work, so I was able to make the decision quickly. I feel a bit better after talking, but honestly, I'm still unsure. Do you think you could live with Sophia just on your part-time pay? That's impossible. I can't make ends meet unless I'm a full-time employee. I thought so. We both fell silent. However, as I told my senior, I felt much better after just consulting. From then on, we talked about various things, considering my future life. After a while, my husband's new car was delivered. The smell of a new car is really great. Yeah. Why are you angry? Be happy. The new car is here. Good for you. You're no fun. Fine, I'll celebrate by myself. Saying that, my husband started drinking beer. You're taking it easy, aren't you? Say whatever you like. He seemed unusually pleased, probably from the joy. The next day, I had to work overtime and came home late. Sophia had prepared dinner, which was a great help. When I came home, my husband was again happily drinking beer. You're working late! Good job! I felt irritated at my husband, who was meddling with me. I have to work hard for your new car, don't I? Feeling annoyed, I made a sarcastic remark. Thanks for earning the extra money. If it's so bothersome, why don't you just stop the payments? I was angry that he'd say such a thing when I was working late. But I held back from complaining to my husband and decided to really stop the payments. The next day, I decided to withdraw all the money from the account used for the car loan. This means the next payment won't go through. I was looking forward to seeing what kind of face my husband would make. I managed to withdraw the money in time before the next due date, and a reminder notice arrived the next month. I hid the letter so my husband wouldn't find it. Of course, the reminder came again the following month, and the month after, but I was able to hide it successfully each time. Around the 4th month after stopping the payments, I received a different document. It was sent by certified mail, and I thought this was the final reminder. When my husband came home, I threw the packet with a document in it at him, saying, "Some important document arrived for you." In a panic, Keith unwrapped the package, shouting, "What the hell? You haven't been making car payments for 3 months?" It seemed the letter stated that the car was to be repossessed due to repeated failure to respond to payment reminders. He would now have to give up his beloved car. But you were the one who said, "Stop the payments." Well, that was just something I said in the heat of the moment when I was drunk. Who would really stop payments? I was so annoyed because you would tell me, "Thanks for earning some pocket money," while I was working so hard. Becoming more defiant, he started to say even worse things. "You always complained every time I bought a car. I should be able to buy a car if I want to." "I didn't complain about you buying a car. You can buy one, but you should pay for it yourself." Struck by my blow, Keith was at a loss for words. "We're going to need money for Sophia's education soon. Think about the future!" I was shaking as he listened to me, and finally, he snapped. "If you can't listen to me, get out! We're getting a divorce!" Hearing the word divorce made even me falter. "Okay, I'll leave. Let's let Sophia decide what she wants to do." Before I finished speaking, Sophia emerged from her room. "I'm obviously going with Mom. It's too much trouble to stay with a father who doesn't do anything." She had heard our argument and seemed to understand what was happening. Sophia, who had already prepared her luggage, surprised me. "Well, I'll be leaving then. I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later." I grabbed only the essentials and left the house. "Hey, where are you going?" Keith's voice suddenly took on a sad tone. Turning back, I said, "We'll properly discuss the divorce process later. I don't need alimony, but you have to pay child support." We left the house, leaving Keith with his tearful face. "Mom, you were so cool, just as expected. But what are we going to do now?" "Don't worry, I had prepared for this, thinking it might happen. I had expected this to happen ever since Harper told me to stop paying the car loan. Also, I had about $3,000 from not paying the car loan payment for 4 months. We stayed in a motel for about 3 days, but I had already arranged for an apartment. We were able to move to the apartment on the 4th day after leaving the house. I'm sorry for making you live in a place like a motel. I wouldn't want to live there forever, but it was actually fun because we already had a place to move to," Sophia said cheerfully, which relieved me a little. "It's going to be just the 2 of us from now on, but I'll do my best. I'll help with everything too. Let's do our best together." We had to go back to our old house to get the rest of our stuff. We also had to finalize the divorce. I contacted Keith before returning to the old house. I asked a lawyer who was recommended by a senior at work to accompany us because I was afraid that Keith might become violent if it was just Sophia and me. The lawyer was an expert in divorce cases and had helped the senior during his divorce. It was expensive, but we could afford it. We've also asked the lawyer to come. Even the appearance of a lawyer surprised Keith, who said, "You're really okay with getting a divorce? I won't forgive you if you come back and apologize later." He glared at me as he threatened me. I thought that this must be his true nature. "It's okay. I won't say such things. Even if you, working part-time, leave this place, you won't be able to make a living. You don't have to worry about me. Just sign the divorce papers quickly." "Fine, I'll sign it. Just shut up." "I will take full child support. Considering your income..." Looking at the child support calculation, Keith started shouting. "Why the hell do I have to pay child support? I won't pay a single penny to a daughter who wants to leave home." Being told this, I felt grateful for having a lawyer. The lawyer convinced my husband that child support is not paid to me, but given to our daughter as a duty of a father. But there's still a chance that my husband won't pay the child support. Therefore, arrangements were made to deduct it from his salary if he doesn't pay. You're just a part-timer, but you've got a lawyer? How prestigious. Where did you get that money? I forgot to tell you, I was made a full-time employee. I'm making about double my old salary, so don't worry. Keith seemed speechless. Honestly, becoming a full-time employee gave me the courage to finally get a divorce. And as a full-time employee, I could also get a housing allowance, so I could afford to rent an apartment. Due to advice from my senior colleague, I had been looking for an apartment I could move into immediately. The decision to bring a lawyer to the discussions was also advice from my senior. And sure enough, the child support from my husband stopped coming in almost immediately. It was good to have a lawyer come with me and set up the procedure to deduct it from his salary. Despite all the chaos, Sophia was able to get into her first choice university. I have to work even harder for her tuition. Working for a car loan that I don't even use is different. This has a sense of purpose. From now on, for Sophia's sake, I plan to live happily together.
I'll give that new house you just bought to my parents, or else we're getting divorced. The quarrels start early in the morning, as if I don't already have enough on my plate with work deadlines and raising our kids. He sulks around threatening divorce, but he wasn't always like this. Just a year ago, he was a decent man. Why do mother-in-laws always have to stir the pot and turn their sons against their wives? My name is Nancy. I'm 49 years old, and I make a living as a comic book artist. I was initially just an editor and artist with my husband, Luke, who's 9 years younger. We bonded over our shared interests, started hanging out at Comic-Cons, and one thing led to another. We were a couple. No grand gestures, no public announcements, just quietly became a couple. Before we knew it, 8 years had passed. We never really had any desire to get married, so we were comfortable in our companionship. However, everything changed when we decided to adopt. Please come to the hospital immediately. I got a call from a nurse in the middle of my workday. She told me that my brother and his wife had been in a car accident. I rushed to the hospital where the doctors broke the news to me. They didn't make it. Losing our parents in our 30s was hard, but my brother and I were adults with our own lives. We managed to get through. My brother, unlike me, was married to a wonderful woman, so our family line was secure, or so I joked. I was content with my single life. After years of trying, my brother and his wife were blessed with twins, a moment of joy for all of us. However, the twins couldn't leave the hospital with their mother after birth as they were jaundiced and needed to stay in for a few days. The new parents were commuting to the hospital daily to see their infants when a drunk driver took them away, leaving the twins behind. Afterward, there were relatives who aimed for my brother and his wife's inheritance and expressed interest in adopting the twins, but with firm intention to protect these precious lives that my beloved sibling had left behind. Not for money, I initiated the adoption process for the twins. In this process, I faced harsh criticism from many relatives and some even severed ties with me. Fortunately, right after the Lehman shock, I had purchased 3 one-room apartments in the Marina district. I was living in one and renting out the other 2. Apart from my earnings as a comic book artist, I also had a steady rental income. So I had both a place to live and enough income to raise children. However, I had overlooked something crucial. I had never been married, nor had I ever raised a child. At the time, I was so focused on protecting the twins that I hadn't taken into account what would come next. I was able to take a break from my ongoing comic series and somehow manage unfamiliar household chores and child rearing. It was already a huge task to care for one infant, but I was thrown into the deep end, having to take care of 2 at the same time, and it was hectic every day. Seeing me run ragged by the twins, Luke, my editor, suddenly proposed to me, saying, "Miss Nancy, will you marry me?" I had lived for 49 years, had a couple of lovers in the past, but as I was absorbed in my work, my marriageable age had passed without me noticing. Also, having continued a vague relationship, more than friends but less than lovers, for 8 years, I couldn't find the meaning to get married now and was unable to respond to his proposal. As I was looking down, lost in thought, one of the twins, my son, started crying loudly using his whole body. Whether he wanted milk, a diaper change, or was just angry at being woken up, I wasn't sure. There, it's okay, don't cry. As soon as I picked up the eldest twin, he stopped crying, but I couldn't pick up the younger twin and he continued crying. That's when Luke immediately picked up the younger son and started soothing him. "See, at times like this, you can't hold both of them at once, right? Would you make me their father?" he asked. But you understand that I'm 49 years old and already have 2 kids, right? You're young and unmarried, so it would be better for you to find a woman of childbearing age, I replied. But when I said this, Luke responded, even though I'm 9 years younger, I'm 40, I'm already quite the middle-aged man. Would you be convinced if I say I want to spend the rest of my time with you? As Luke said this, looking into my eyes, I thought, maybe it's too much for me to raise twins alone. Perhaps the presence of a father is indeed necessary. With that feeling prevailing, I humbly accept your proposal. I will strive and dedicate myself as a wife and mother, I replied to him. And so we got married and we're planning to live peacefully and happily ever after as a family of 4, but I can't stand this anymore. The one-room apartment, which I had never minded when I was single, had become too cramped since the twins' arrival. With an increasing amount of stuff, there was barely any room to walk around. Despite being newly married, my husband's belongings remained at his parents' house, and it wasn't practical for a family of 4 to live in this one-room apartment. Realizing that it was non-environmentally suitable for raising children, both physically and otherwise, I decided to buy a house. Let's move to a spacious house where our family of 4 can live comfortably. Once I made up my mind, I immediately took action. At first, I was looking for used properties and ready-built houses which could be moved into immediately, but I could not find any that met my criteria like proximity to the train station and having a garden. So my husband and I decided to find a suitable piece of land and build a custom home. A 49-year-old mother who's a comic book artist and a 40-year-old husband with a regular job. We thought that we could easily get a housing loan from the bank, but due to my unstable income and the repayment period, we faced several issues, and contrary to our expectations, we couldn't get the loan. With no choices left, we thought about taking out a loan together, but my husband had already taken a loan in his name to renovate his parents' house. Not only that, he also had a car loan. The only way for us to buy a house for our family was to prepare cash. Alright, let's sell the one-room apartment in the Marina District. They had appreciated in value since I purchased them about 14 years ago and were now worth more than twice the purchase price. I decided to sell my 2 properties with the estimated price that I could afford a newly built detached house with a garden in the suburbs. Without sticking to the city center, I can afford a house in the suburbs with a garden. I decided to keep the remaining property where I currently lived until the new house was finished. So, using my network of friends and acquaintances, I was able to find a piece of land, design the floor plan, and sign a contract with a construction company that would build my dream house. All that was left was to persevere in this cramped one-room apartment until the new house was completed. But just as I was gearing up, the intercom rang. When I checked the camera, there stood my husband's parents. "Hello, you're there, right? Open the door already." Taken aback by their sudden visit, I unlocked the door and hurried to the entrance to welcome them. "Oh, Nancy, thank you for letting us in. We heard from Luke that you're building a new house because the current room is too small. It's strange to chat standing up. Can we talk inside?" And with those words, they practically barged in, more like home invaders than guests. "Luke's at work today, right? We heard you work from home, so we came to check on you." I couldn't hide my surprise at this unexpected visit from my in-laws. But I couldn't just ask them to leave without even offering them a cup of tea after they'd gone to all the trouble of coming over, given their advanced age. So I remained quiet. This really is too small for 4 people. Luke's mother said before cuddling the twins and cooing about how cute they were. Then suddenly, "We renovated our house recently. Why don't you stay with us until your new house is ready?" At this unexpected offer from my mother-in-law, I was speechless. I'm in my late 40s and I thought I was beyond being afraid of anything, but when it came to my mother-in-law's words, even I was rendered speechless. I felt as though I had been turned to stone by Medusa's gaze and couldn't move. Then, "The construction will probably take about a year, right? You've become part of our family, so why don't you let us pamper you a bit? We can look after these twin babies now that we're retired," my father-in-law said. You often hear about father-in-law and mother-in-law issues or trouble with in-laws. But I was ashamed of swallowing those stories whole and doubting the kindness of my in-laws. They are really wonderful people after all. They are Luke's parents, I thought. So that night, Luke and I discussed and decided to live with them until the new house was completed. A few days later, we left our furniture and appliances at home and only brought the necessary daily necessities to Luke's parents' house. They treated us grandly that night, but the following morning, they quickly showed their true colors. "Nancy, wake up." I was awakened by my mother-in-law at 5 a.m., just after I had fed the twins their milk at 3 a.m. and had finally gotten them back to sleep. "It's unacceptable to oversleep at your age. Get up and make breakfast for your husband. I'll teach you how to make Luke's favorite miso soup, so remember it well." I was exasperated by the early morning cooking lesson, despite hardly having had any sleep. I pleaded for a little more sleep, but she scolded me, saying, "I wasn't allowed to sleep when I was your age. You're about the same age as me, but you're too spoiled asking for more sleep because you're tired." She was the type of person who believed in experiencing hardship, as she had when she was young, rather than praising and encouraging. Not only was my mother-in-law a problem, but my father-in-law also had no sense of the atmosphere. "Excuse me, would it be possible to refrain from smoking indoors? We have a baby in the house." When I politely explained this to him after he lit a cigarette without a word at the dining table after dinner, saying, "What? This is my house. I can smoke wherever I want. It's none of your business," he got angry and refused to listen to me. Furthermore, when I left the table to look for an ashtray, my father-in-law put his cigarette ash in the soup I had made, which he hadn't touched, saying it was unpalatable. To make matters worse, he discarded his cigarette butt in the soup bowl. Having lived a poor life in my childhood, I was sensitive about food. I couldn't bear to see food disrespected, let alone wasted. That night, when I told my husband about the terrible way his father treated the food I made and how his mother forced chores on me, leaving me no time to rest, my husband sighed and said, "Isn't it your fault that the food you cook led to such a situation? It's obvious who's the villain here. My parents are very forgiving. All it would take is an apology from you. Let's go apologize right now. I'll accompany you. If you, as the twins' mother, lack the patience and endurance, our children won't grow up to be respectable adults like me." Upon receiving my firm response that I would never apologize, my husband, his face beet red, retreated to our room without uttering a word. The next morning, he left for work without eating breakfast. Surprisingly, he returned home partway through the day and thrust divorce papers in front of me. "What was that attitude yesterday? I'm your husband. Who do you think you are speaking to me like that? I'll divorce you. Now sign these divorce papers." He raged, so I replied, "Well, if you're the husband, then I'm the wife. Got a problem with that? Bring it on. I'll sign. Just hand them over." I promptly signed the divorce papers, affixed my seal, and handed them back to my husband. It seemed that losing the argument annoyed him, so he turned to his mother for backup, scurrying off to his parents' room. A 40-year-old man running to his mom because he was about to lose an argument, he was acting like a middle schooler. Such a man wouldn't have the guts to submit divorce papers. As for his mother, who came to his aid, she said, "Luke is the backbone of the family. He goes out to work for all of us. We women must respect our husbands while protecting our homes." As expected, she sided with her son. I had thought living together would make raising our twins easier, but in reality, my in-laws didn't help at all with the children. What's more, while I had shared housework with my husband before, I now had to do it all myself. I was at my wit's end. This is 100 times harder than when I was raising the kids in that cramped one-room apartment. I've reached my limit, I told my husband. His response? "My mom is doing her best for you, Nancy. Isn't it disrespectful to talk about her like that? And you should learn from my perfect mother. She's righteous." He was completely brainwashed by his mother's old-fashioned values. I realized it was impossible to continue the conversation. Early the next morning, I packed up our valuables, took our twins, and went back to our one-room apartment in the Marina District. The relief I felt at being able to raise my kids in peace was short-lived. I was shocked to find that the furniture and appliances I had left behind were all gone. When I called my husband, who had a spare key, he nonchalantly admitted to selling them to a buyer. "When we move into our new home, we'll buy new appliances, right? Old appliances won't suit a new house, so I sold them. Also, our new place has built-in furniture, so I didn't think we needed ours." He had sold everything without my permission. What's more, he seemed thrilled over the phone that the smart appliances had fetched a good price. When I asked him to return the money he had made from selling our belongings, he claimed he had already used it to buy hot spring trip tickets as gifts for his parents. Furious, I threatened to report him to the police for stealing and using my belongings without my consent, to which he laughed and said, "Theft doesn't apply between family members," making a mockery of me. He even had the audacity to laugh, suggesting that I neither had the time nor money to consult with a lawyer given the expenses of raising our kids. Infuriated, I hung up and vowed to seek revenge on my husband's family. A few days later, he called me.
"It's insane to depict our family in your comic. What were you thinking? I've had enough. The new house you bought will be a gift to my parents. It's the punishment for a disrespectful wife. Oppose me and it's divorce."
So, before I returned to my apartment in the Marina District, I had taken from his room to the ward office and submitted the divorce papers that we had signed. Soon after, I received another call, not from my husband, but from my ex-husband, trembling.
What do you mean by divorce? Why did you submit the divorce papers?"
I could hear his trembling voice over the phone and imagine his pale face. The thought was so amusing that I couldn't help but burst into laughter. "But wasn't it you who said you'd divorce me if I defied you?" I retorted. He cried out,
"I didn't mean it. I don't want a divorce."
I had no intentions of forgiving him, and to add insult to injury, I informed my ex-husband about the forthcoming publication of my comic essay, which detailed the harassment I endured from his family. Upon hearing this, Luke panicked.
"Hey, I beg you. Everyone in the publishing industry knows I'm your husband. If you depict my family..."
What? Are you afraid it will be revealed that you still call your mother Mummy at night? When I taunted him, Luke said,
"When a family member is in trouble, you help them, right? I took care of our twins because we're family.
Listening to him trying to make himself look good made me speechless. He then said,
"Marrying you, Nancy, made me a lucky man. This divorce feels like an extension of a little squabble, right? Let's start over. We can make it work this time."
His sudden change of heart made it clear he thought my filing for divorce was just a childish pout. I asked him why he ignored the harassment I had received from my in-laws and why he had promised them a new house if he was now proposing to reconcile. His reasoning was apparently that his family was kind enough to let me live in their home for over 6 months for free. If I defied them, they would not let me live with them. If that happened, I wouldn't be able to live in the new house either. I wondered, why do people feel entitled to their spouse's belongings after marriage? His thoughts left me speechless, not with anger, but with utter disbelief. Apparently, my ex-mother-in-law had brainwashed Luke by telling him that I, an older single mother, would not be desirable to anyone else. "That's why you ended up alone, right?" she would say. "My dear Luke was kind enough to take you in, so you should be grateful to us." Convinced that I would forgive anything, Luke begged me at over 40 with no place to return to.
"Let's live together."
"There is no way I can live with such an irrational person like you. Soon, I will ask for compensation through my lawyer for the furniture and electronics you sold without my permission. And don't forget that you tarnished my reputation as a publishing company's breadwinner. I hope your chair is still there when the holiday is over." I cut him off and hung up the phone. After that, we moved to our newly completed house. I received a couple $1,000s from Luke, which was far less than $1 million, for compensation and the sale of the furniture and appliances. Then I took a long vacation until my twins started elementary school and raised them with much love and time. Because I hadn't been active as a comic artist for nearly 6 years, some of my work started to gain a sort of mystery premium. My True Story, a collection of bride bullying stories, which I drew just before my long break, became a bestseller and was even made into a movie. I felt a mix of joy and embarrassment. But when these twin boys grow up, I want to teach them to always be on their future wife's side and be there for her, not their mother-in-law. If you can't even clean properly, maybe you should just have an abortion. I mean, it doesn't bother me either way. How could you say such a thing? Unforgivable, just too far. My name's Alicia. I'm in my late 30s and I'm a company worker. I've been married to my husband Kevin for 5 years now. We don't have any kids yet. When we were getting married, Kevin said, "We're not getting any younger and we both want kids, so I'd like you to stay at home and quit your job." But I just couldn't give up my current job, so we've both been working. Now Kevin understands how I feel and we're living harmoniously, sharing household chores. Even the notion of moving in with my in-laws was brought up once. My mother-in-law used to be a teacher. She said that when Kevin and I have a child, she'll help so I can continue working while raising the child. Her parents helped her when she was raising her children while working, and she wanted to pass on the support. For now, we're leaving things at, we'll think about it once we're blessed with a child. Kevin is quite dominant and expects me to follow a step behind him, especially around his family. Despite that, he is inherently kind and we maintained an equal relationship at home. Lately, my health has been less than stellar. My stomach has been upset, I've been suffering from dizzy spells, and I'm irritable. At the end of my workday, I'm exhausted and I can barely manage the household chores. Kevin has been very concerned despite being tired from his own work. He helps with my share of chores, asks me what I feel like eating, and even goes out of his way to buy it. However, my health kept deteriorating, so he said, "You should see a doctor. If it's too much to go alone, I'll accompany you. I'm worried, please." He accompanied me to the doctor, and it turned out that I was pregnant. The cause of my poor health was morning sickness. Both Kevin and I were overjoyed at our long-awaited pregnancy. We thought that this morning sickness would surely calm down soon. However, even after a month, 2 months, my morning sickness did not subside. I learned that the severity and duration of morning sickness vary greatly among individuals, and some people even suffer from it until they give birth. My health worsened day by day. I managed to go to work, but I could no longer do any housework after returning home. Seeing this, Kevin began to grow cold towards me. "Why isn't your morning sickness over yet? It's not an illness, is it? Are you pretending to suffer so you can slack off from housework?" "I don't know why either. Why would you say such terrible things? That's harsh." "My mother said she never had morning sickness. My colleagues at work said it was over quickly and they were doing housework. Alicia, you're just being lazy. If you toughen up, you won't feel morning sickness, right? You're lacking determination." I wanted to argue back at Kevin, who compared me with his mother and others, accusing me of slacking off, but I didn't have the energy to do so at the time. I was coming home from work, barely managing the household chores, while feeling dizzy and sometimes vomiting in the toilet. Kevin would finish his share of the chores, then he'd lie on the sofa, watching TV and laughing while I was desperately trying to do the housework. Even when I asked for a little help, he would say, "At least take responsibility for your own work. Morning sickness isn't an illness. If you pull yourself together, you can handle it. It's only hard because you think it is. If you're like this with morning sickness, how will you manage childcare?" And wouldn't help me. After a while, Kevin fell asleep on the sofa and his smartphone slipped from his hand. The screen showed a message asking, "Has Alicia's slacking off habit been cured?" I was furious. Using Kevin's finger while he was sleeping, I unlocked the fingerprinted protected phone and I found numerous emails from my mother-in-law in the mailbox. "Has Alicia's slacking off habit been cured? She's just using morning sickness as an excuse to slack off. She's planning to slack off in her work and housework. You have to hit her hard." "I see. I'll tell her. I've never had morning sickness at all. As long as you're careful, you'll be fine." "I see. I'll tell Alicia too." Morning sickness is nothing compared to childcare, which is 100 times harder. I'm worried about what will happen after the baby is born if she's like this now. That's troublesome. They also talked about how I was too old and questioned whether a healthy child could be born. They even suggested Kevin should remarry a younger woman who would not suffer from morning sickness and would bear a healthy child. "You don't have such a partner in mind, do you?" "Oh, if you feel like it, I'll introduce her to you, okay? Her name is Mona. She's my student and she's 25 now. She admired me and became a teacher. She's so cute. It's fulfilling and it doesn't have to be a burden on you, Kevin. If it's Mona, I think she'll definitely do it if I ask her to live with me. I wouldn't mind if you introduced me to her." They even made plans for a meal with Mona, one of my mother-in-law's former students. Regularly, they were bad-mouthing me. I managed to take a picture of all the emails and save them when I had a chance to check Kevin's phone. I was stunned for a while and couldn't comprehend what I had seen, but I felt I understood why my husband had grown colder towards me. That day, I couldn't get out of the toilet from morning till evening. My morning sickness showed no signs of calming down, and my throat was sore from all the vomiting. I worried whether the baby in my belly was alright given my condition. Recently, I've barely been able to eat solid food, and have just been managing to stay hydrated. Feeling my limit, I was about to call Kevin from the bathroom for help when he showed up at the bathroom door by chance. "I am really suffering today. Please take me to the hospital. Maybe an IV drip will make me feel better." "Why are you fussing over a little morning sickness? It's already enough. I have plans today. Please don't bother me." I remembered today he had plans to dine with my mother-in-law and Mona. I wanted to tail them, but that seemed out of the question now. "I plan to go out in the evening, but seeing you, Alicia, depresses me. I'm leaving now. I can't even relax in my own house. Just keep slacking off alone, alright?" Why are you always so cruel? The child inside me is ours, Kevin. Can't you cooperate or help a little? If morning sickness prevents you from even cleaning properly, maybe you should just get rid of the child. I don't really care either way. You're choosing to have this baby, Alicia, right? Then stop complaining and handle your business. Just don't burden me, okay? As I heard his words, my consciousness began to drift away. I couldn't muster any strength. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. My parents looked at me worriedly. What had happened? Apparently, when I was trying to call Kevin from the bathroom using my phone, I accidentally dialed home. My father answered the phone and overheard Kevin's harsh words. My parents rushed to our place immediately and found me collapsed alone in the bathroom. Kevin had left me unconscious and gone out. My parents quickly called an ambulance and I was taken to the hospital. Fortunately, both I and the baby were okay, but I was advised to stay in the hospital for a night just to be sure. My parents tried to reach Kevin, but he was unresponsive. He had read the messages but didn't reply. He didn't show up at the hospital that day. I told my parents everything, sobbing. I showed them all the photos from Kevin's phone. My father, deep in thought, said, "We need to talk with Kevin and his parents." The next morning, when I was about to be discharged, Kevin finally showed up in my hospital room. Kevin, grinning, said, "Seriously? What are you being hospitalized for? You just stayed one night, right? See, I told you your morning sickness isn't a big deal. Let's go home now." Kevin, wait a moment. The doctor told me something earlier. I got a medical certificate that recommends rest due to my condition. I've already contacted my workplace to take leave starting tomorrow. Oh wow, so you're slacking off from work now too? Must be nice. This morning sickness thing. Well, it makes sense. You would be a burden to everyone at work in this condition. So if you're going to be home from tomorrow, I don't need to do the chores, right? It's only fair since you're going to be home, slacking off. Kevin, have you been talking to your dad recently? Does he know about Alicia's condition? Well, no, I haven't talked to my dad recently. I do keep in touch with my mom, and I've told her about the situation, so I think she has informed my dad. Considering Alicia's situation and your current attitude, Kevin, I cannot allow her to return home. We will take Alicia in for a while. What? Don't spoil Alicia, please. Well, we are sorry, but regarding this matter, we need to apologize to your parents. We would like to visit when your father is present. Also, what happened last night? We tried contacting you multiple times, or perhaps you were too busy with work? I wonder if Kevin noticed that my mom's eyes were not smiling even though she was. He made a tense face and said, "Okay, I understand. I'll make arrangements. Last night I was working. I've been busy recently. Excuse me." And he left the room. Then the doctor came for the final check before discharging me. After finishing the examination, the doctor explained how I should take care of myself from tomorrow onwards. He then addressed Kevin. "You're Alicia's husband, right? Alicia is going through a tough time right now, so please take care of her. Try to do the chores so that she can rest her body." To which Kevin replied, "Doctor, what are you talking about? It's just morning sickness." "Well, I understand from your position you have to say that to avoid complaints, right? Don't worry, I'll make sure Alicia does what she needs to do. When we have a family meeting, my parents will surely reprimand her too. Now, if you'll excuse me." And he left. The doctor, puzzled, offered, "He seems to misunderstand something. Should I explain it to him more thoroughly?" My mother responded with a smile. "No, it's alright. We'll handle this on our end. I'm sorry for the unpleasant scene you had to witness." My parents seemed lost in quiet contemplation. A month passed and my health finally began to stabilize. The time had come to go to Kevin's family home and resolve things once and for all. That said, I hadn't been in touch with Kevin much in the months since I had returned home, and I had no idea how far things had progressed with Mona. I had no clue where the discussion would lead. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience caused by my extended stay at my parents' home due to morning sickness." "It's not a bother at all. Are you feeling better now? Be careful not to push yourself too hard." While my father-in-law expressed concern for my health, Kevin and my mother-in-law gave me condescending smirks. "Thank you. In fact, Kevin mentioned that Alicia's morning sickness was an act of indulgence, which is distressing for us as her parents." Morning sickness as an indulgence? Kevin, did you say that? Well, isn't that right, Mom? No, it just seems to be lasting too long. You're better now, aren't you, Alicia? That's good. My mother-in-law hastily tried to end the conversation. "No, we need to clarify this, mother-in-law. You are worried that Alicia, being older, might not be able to give birth to a healthy child. You plan to arrange a remarriage between your young former student and Kevin? How far have the discussions with this young, Miss Mona, was it, progressed?" What is this all about? Has my wife really said such a disrespectful thing? No, it's not like that. It was a joke, a joke. A joke? Mom, what do you mean? We've already had a meal with Mona, and I really like her. After this, we will divorce Alicia for failing to do housework and claim alimony. Then I will marry Mona, right? At Kevin's words, everyone fell silent. An uneasy silence filled the air. My mother-in-law turned pale, and my father-in-law was red in the face. It seems there has been some outrageous discussions happening without my knowledge. For today, please go home. I will have a proper conversation with these two. I apologize for the situation. Once again, I ended up returning to my parents' house. I felt like I might never return to that house again. A few days later, I learned a surprising fact from my father. Kevin had received disciplinary action from his company. The reason was maternity harassment. He had committed maternity harassment against a woman in his department. "It's evidence that you're slacking off if you get sick just because you're pregnant. Work is not your place to relax. If you don't want to work, then go home." He would assign heavy lifting tasks to visibly pregnant women. "Can't you even do this? You're just a burden on the company. You should just quit already. You're a nuisance to everyone." Apparently, it was awful. There were several victims, and they seemed to have reported him to the company's compliance department. My father, who has connections with Kevin's company, apparently got the information. Kevin said, "But Mom taught me that. I just said what Mom said. What's wrong with that? I think the same way in my heart, but in public I pretend to be kind to pregnant women and worry about them if they're not feeling well. Don't you understand that?" "Then you knew that even if you thought so, you shouldn't say it out loud to Alicia, right? Why did you say such a thing to Kevin? Why did you do something that would lead to their divorce?" Kevin seemed to understand nothing, so I thought I could guide him to divorce. I thought Mona, being young, would listen to me. She admires me after all, and I'm sure she'll agree to live with us. Alicia is just too headstrong, and I don't prefer. It seemed my mother-in-law had arranged everything behind the scenes. My father-in-law didn't know anything, and Kevin was just a pawn in her game. Afterwards, I was incessantly contacted by Kevin. "I was deceived by Mom. I was just Misunderstood. I didn't know anything. Please forgive me. I will treasure you and our baby from now on. Oh, just the other day you were telling me to get rid of this baby, weren't you? It's too late to start caring now. We're getting a divorce. Please live happily with Mona. We had this back and forth many times. Kevin's words, just get rid of it, that I had heard while I was fainting deeply wounded my heart. It was something I simply couldn't forgive. On the other hand, I learned that Mona was not aware of Kevin's marital status and had only agreed to have dinner with him because my mother-in-law suggested it, assuring her it would avoid complications at work. Apparently, she didn't become a teacher because she admired my mother-in-law, nor did she hold any particular affection for her. When she found out about my mother-in-law's manipulation, she was genuinely shocked and looked down on her. She had just been unwittingly dragged into all of this. I was worried that getting a divorce would be difficult, but my father-in-law stepped in. He scolded and persuaded both Kevin and my mother-in-law, and we were able to finalize the divorce. I deeply regret that Kevin hurt you in such a difficult time of pregnancy. As a father, I feel extremely guilty. I am also sorry for my wife's actions and for not having monitored her properly, which caused a great deal of discomfort. He apologized from his heart. He paid for Kevin's alimony and child support in a lump sum, and apparently planned to make Kevin repay him in installments. I was able to smoothly finalize the divorce thanks to you, father-in-law. Please come visit us when the baby is born. I'd love to, but hold off for now. I need to straighten out Kevin and my wife and keep a close watch on them. Besides, if they found out I was secretly meeting you, they might go off the rails again. I don't want to expose you or my grandchild to any more danger. Kevin resigned from his job, which he had been disciplined at. He said it was too hard to stay at the company. He tried to find another job, but seemed to be having a hard time sticking to one. He's living with his mother under his father's watchful eye, and it seems he's having a rough time. Rumors about Mona's situation spread in my mother-in-law's workplace, and it seems everyone is giving her strange looks. The teaching world is a rapid turnover of school reassignments every 3 to 8 years, which apparently makes it easier for rumors to spread. Even without this rumor, my mother-in-law is already a dubious person, so people around her were likely thinking she might do something like this. I wonder if she was shocked to find out that Mona, whom she thought admired her, actually disliked her. Lately, she seems to have become very quiet at work. After safely giving birth to a girl, as expected, Kevin pleaded, "Please let me see my daughter. I have a right since I'm paying child support." I responded formally. Child support payments and visitation rights are separate legal obligations and not exchangeable. We decided during the divorce that you would pay child support and we would not have visitation. Therefore, I declined your request for a visit. After that, he stopped contacting me. However, sometimes I wonder if it was right to deprive my child of her father based on my feelings. After all, it was my mother-in-law who was the real mastermind, and Kevin was merely brainwashed. When I confessed this story to my mother, she said, "Indeed, Kevin is a kind person, but I wonder, who is he the kindest to? If he's kindest to you and his daughter, it might be okay to let him see her. What do you think?" Indeed, Kevin is kind, but he's the kindest to himself. Or rather, he's only kind to himself. That's why when I was sick and became a burden to his life, he was filled with negative feelings towards me and ended up going along with my mother-in-law's plan. I can't trust a person who pushed me away when I was weak and needed help. I might ask my daughter if she wants to meet him when she's old enough to have her own opinions, but until then, I don't plan to let her see him. My world completely changed after my daughter was born. Parenting is really fun, but it's also very challenging. I plan to take maternity leave for a while to focus on parenting, and then return to work after leaving my daughter at daycare. I decided to live at my parents' house during my maternity leave. I'm considering finding an apartment near my parents' house where I can live with my daughter soon. Since then, I secretly contacted my father-in-law and asked him to visit us once without informing Kevin. Seeing him carefully and tenderly lift my daughter in his arms, I couldn't help but wish he could visit more often. He didn't take any photos of my daughter. He said if he took any, he might keep looking at them at home and then his wife and Kevin would find out. Instead, I took a lot of pictures of him and my daughter together. I plan to make an album and present it to him one day. I'm incredibly fortunate. I have the support of my parents and a job to return to. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my morning sickness had been lighter and I had continued to live with Kevin. Would he have cooperated with me when childcare became difficult, thinking of our daughter and working together to overcome challenges? Would he have risked his own life to protect our daughter when danger loomed? When I think about this, I feel glad that my severe morning sickness exposed Kevin's true character early on. Maybe it was my daughter who made me aware of this. From now on, I plan to appreciate the kindness of those around me and move forward with my daughter, looking ahead. My name is Sarah, a 35-year-old stay-at-home mom. I married my high school sweetheart, Tom, and we moved for his job, now living in the next town over. I'm currently pregnant, just about ready to hit my 9th month, but circumstances have brought me back to my childhood home. The reason? My younger brother's wedding. He called to share the news that he was getting married. I knew he had been seeing someone for a while, but it seems they've decided to tie the knot. As his only sister, I'd love to be there for my little brother's wedding, but with my due date right around the corner, it's unpredictable what could happen. After discussing it with my family, we decided it would be best if I sat this one out. Since today is the eve of the wedding and my brother is returning home, I brought over some gifts as a way to celebrate, which is why I've returned home today. As I walked in, I found my brother lounging in the living room, sipping his coffee. Seeing me, his face lit up with a big smile.
Wow, Sarah, it's been a while. Your belly's gotten so big.
Looking at my pregnant belly, he seemed quite surprised. I know, right? I've gotten quite big. It's even a task to get out of bed now. My brother has always loved kids and works as a kindergarten teacher. He's very excited about my baby coming.
Wow, this is really amazing. Hey, can I touch your belly?
He asked for permission to touch my pregnant belly, to which I replied, sure, go ahead. I didn't mind him touching my belly, so I let him go ahead. However, little did I know at the time that this would trigger an unthinkable incident. As my brother gingerly laid his hand on my belly, the baby inside gave his hand a gentle kick from within.
Wow, this is so moving. I can't wait to have a kid of my own someday.
You have so much to look forward to, I replied just as we were having this friendly conversation. What on earth are you doing? Suddenly a young woman stormed into the living room, staring at me with a fierce expression. As I was trying to figure out how to explain, an immense force struck my cheek. I didn't realize I had been hit until a moment later. Unprepared for such an attack, I stumbled backwards and landed hard on my butt. If that wasn't enough, the next moment a loud pop was followed by water leaking from below. I realized that my water had broken due to the fall and my belly began to hurt from the shock. Ouch, it hurts, please help. Between being struck and my water breaking, I was in so much shock that I passed out then and there. When I woke up, I found myself lying in bed staring blankly at the ceiling. Where am I? Oh no, the baby. Is the baby okay? In an instant, I felt a wave of fear washing over me. My belly, which had been swollen until recently, now appeared smaller with an IV tube attached to my arm.
Oh, are you awake?
A sudden voice startled me. In the room were an elderly couple I didn't know and the woman who had pushed me earlier. The woman was looking over with a sullen face. Who are you? I managed to ask. The situation was already causing me to panic, and seeing strangers in the room made it even more confusing.
Sorry for the confusion.
We're the parents of Luna, your brother's bride-to-be. The parents of my brother's bride-to-be were grinning at me. That's not important right now. I need a doctor. As I reached to press the nurse call button, my hand was suddenly held back. What are you doing? Let go of me. This time, the bride's mother interfered. It's okay, we'll call for you. But before that, there's something we need to discuss. I couldn't understand why they wanted to talk before calling a doctor. I needed to know what was going on as soon as possible. I don't have time to talk with you. My baby is missing. Oh, that? The baby's in the incubator. You have nothing to worry about. Everything is under the doctor's control. Then they suggested a settlement. Their daughter was young. They said that I should forgive her this time because of her youth. Are you kidding me? I can't do that. The absurdity of it all led me to shout out. What are you talking about? You don't need to be so tough. You're just poor after all, aren't you? You want money from the settlement, right? Don't hold back. The three of them seemed to assume that I was poor and that I would certainly agree to a settlement if they offered enough money. But I couldn't accept that. They had disregarded my life and thought they could resolve it with money. I won't. I'm ready to fight. Earlier, you referred to my baby as that. I will never settle with someone who doesn't even apologize. Seeing my firm stance, they began to show their impatience. They increased the amount they offered, 1 million, 2 million, but no matter what they said, I wouldn't agree. Enough is enough. Because of you, my wedding was canceled, you know. If anything, I'm the victim here. If you don't agree to the settlement, I'll demand payment for the cancellation of the wedding. Just when I was at my wit's end, not understanding their pressure, and tears started welling up, a voice rang out.
We've heard the whole story.
With those words, my husband Tom and my brother suddenly walked into the hospital room. Both of them glared at the trio with a menacing look. Hey, where have you been? I've been calling you since earlier. I received a text that our wedding is canceled tomorrow, but there's no explanation. Explain it properly to me, Luna said as she tried to run towards my brother.
Don't come any closer. You're not my bride.
Huh? She was taken aback by the sudden comment and stopped in her tracks. What do you mean by not my bride? Aren't we supposed to be a couple since we're getting married? Are you joking about me not being your bride? Was she not understanding the situation? Or did she think my brother was just messing around? Her face didn't seem to register the gravity of the situation yet.
Do you think this is a joke? You let your emotions get the best of you, hit Sarah without hearing her out, and she ended up going into labor due to that. All you did was look down on her while she was in pain. Didn't even try to help, did you?
That's right, she stood there with a faint smile looking down at me in pain, offering no help whatsoever until I passed out. I was just so shocked that I couldn't move. It's not like I didn't want to help. She insisted that she had intended to help but was too shocked to move.
Really? But you seem to be quite relaxed looking at your smartphone and grinning. If you were really too shocked to move, you wouldn't be leisurely checking your phone, would you?
She must not have thought that we saw that. I didn't miss the momentary twitch in her face. Well, I didn't mean any harm, but more importantly, our wedding was ruined, right? Don't you care about that? Don't you feel bad about the inconvenience caused to the people who came from afar? All because of that. Just like her mother, she referred to what happened to me and my baby as that. That word was more unforgivable than anything else. It wasn't just me who felt that way. Tom did too.
I'm sorry, but on the way here, we filed a complaint. We can't let this go.
Their smug faces from earlier dropped, gaping in surprise at Tom's words. Wait a minute, what do you mean you filed a complaint? She collapsed and went into labor on her own, right? If anything, our wedding got ruined. Shouldn't we be the ones demanding compensation? Hearing words like compensation and complaint, Luna became flustered, desperately wanting to marry my brother.
Brian, don't you think that's a bit harsh? Our daughter didn't mean any harm. Please forgive her.
Yeah, and isn't that woman also to blame? My daughter thought she was your mistress and got jealous. I think you bear some responsibility too. It seems Luna thought I was my brother's mistress, but he had shown her my photo in advance, so could there have been a misunderstanding? Even if there was, it's absolutely not acceptable to hit a pregnant woman.
No matter what the reason is, hitting a pregnant woman is unforgivable. You haven't even apologized to Sarah once, have you? Why would I want to marry someone like that? Don't joke around.
My brother raised his voice and Luna, looking pale, came over to me. I understand. I apologize. I'm very sorry for what happened. See, I apologize now, so please reconsider. It seemed like she was only apologizing reluctantly because she didn't want the marriage to be called off.
No, it's too late for that. After hearing what you said, I can't even consider marrying you. I'll demand payment for the cancellation of the wedding and compensation. Stay out of my life.
No matter what she said, my brother's mind was made up, and neither Tom nor I intended to withdraw the complaint. Despite other patients being around, all they cared about was not wanting to get divorced. They were desperate to have their wedding, worried about face saving for their relatives and colleagues. It didn't seem like they felt any remorse for the terrible thing they'd done to us. And so, my brother and Luna broke up. I felt sorry for him, but
don't worry about it, Sarah. Actually, I'm relieved. I didn't marry such a heartless woman. If it's meant to be, I'll meet someone wonderful.
His positive words reassured me a bit. Later, the doctor came to see us. The baby was fine, and I was told that we could go home together once my condition improved. Although I fell on my butt, my lower body was in pain, but other than that, there was no abnormality in my bones. The only pain was from the scar left by the emergency cesarean section. When I went to see my baby, they were crying energetically in their small bed. The moment I heard their voice, tears of relief streamed down my face. Thus, after several days in the hospital with my child, my health returned. And since neither my child nor I had abnormalities in our health, we finally reached the day of discharge. On the day of discharge, it seems that my husband Tom and my brother were coming to the hospital by car. I was waiting at the hospital entrance holding my child. "It's all right, sweetie. Daddy will be here soon. You must be excited to go home." While I was soothing my child, that's when it happened.
Ah! Suddenly, Luna raised her voice and swung a metal bat towards me and my child. What the hell? I managed to dodge her in a split second, but she was aiming to swing again. This was dangerous. I thought I had to run away, but my legs were trembling and I couldn't move from the spot. Then a security guard who happened to be nearby came over and protected us. Soon my husband and the others arrived and restrained her. "Let go of me! What are you doing?" She screamed and thrashed about being held down, causing a scene in front of everyone. I could feel the blood draining from my face at the sight. The child I was holding in my arm must have sensed something as well because they started crying as if they were on fire. "Are you okay, Sarah?" Tom came over to me and stroked my back, seeing my face pale. "What's going on? Why is she here for starters? I didn't notify anyone about my discharge today." That's right, only a handful of people knew that I was being discharged today. So why did she know that I was being discharged today? "Hey, no one told you about the discharge. How the hell did you know?" He questioned Luna, who was being restrained. Then we heard unbelievable words from her mouth. "Of course, I've been staking out here every day." Apparently she had been coming to the hospital every day to meet me, waiting for me to leave. "You've been here every day? What about your job? You didn't ditch just to be here, did you?" If she had skipped work to be here, that would be a problem.
Don't be ridiculous. Even I wouldn't do such a thing. I told my boss that I've been harassed by the groom's sister and my marriage has been ruined. I'm so shocked that I can't recover, so I'm taking a break. So it's not like I'm playing hooky being here today. She explained confidently, but I think it does qualify as playing hooky. And by the groom's sister, she means me. How was I supposed to harass my brother's bride? I didn't even have time to harass her when I first met her that day. I felt frustrated not knowing what she was talking about. "Stop lying for once. My sister didn't harass you. That was our first encounter. You need to understand the gravity of what you've done." It seems that she still didn't understand the severity of her actions. When my brother asked why she did this, she apparently still had feelings for him and wanted him to reconsider by threatening me and mediating their relationship. But if she does something like this, it would only further distance my brother. On top of that, he wouldn't want to have anything to do with her for the rest of his life. Doesn't she realize that she's doing the complete opposite? Hey, let's start over again. If we talk, we can understand each other. We don't need to cancel our marriage for such a person. You said you love children, right? I'm young, so I can give birth to as many as you want. Let's build a happy family together. Feeling a chill down my spine, I looked at her face, beaming with a smile. Huh? What are you talking about? Are you okay? There is no way I could live with someone whose screws have come loose. The place you're going to is a jail cell. Immediately after, we could hear the sounds of sirens and several police cars parked nearby. The police officers came over to us immediately, and Luna was taken away. She was shouting at us, "Let go! I was deceived by them! The bad one is that woman! Arrest that woman!" Until she got into the police car, but many people witnessed her swinging the bat at me. After all, this is the entrance of a general hospital, with many patients, their families, and hospital staff coming and going. Our witnesses explained to the police that Luna had swung the bat at me, so her claims were disregarded, and she was taken straight to the police station. As a precaution, I had myself and my child examined. Thankfully, due to my quick reflexes, neither of us were injured. I was relieved to have been able to protect my child. Subsequently, Luna was arrested on charges of attempted assault against us. Someone who had witnessed the scene that day ended up uploading the incident on social media. Although the video was immediately removed by the platform's administration, it had been viewed and shared by a significant number of people, making it impossible to completely erase. As a result of the incident and its spread, Luna lost her job and her parents were forced into a situation where they had to move. Then, Luna's parents came to my family home. "Please help us. We live on pensions and have no money. We can't afford to pay compensation," they pleaded. "Let's settle this peacefully," they suggested. Once Luna was behind bars, it became the responsibility of her parents to pay the damages. They had come to us for a settlement, stating they had no money since they were living on pensions. "No matter what you say, I can't forgive you. If you contact us any further, I will consult the police," I responded. Previously, the two of them would have apologized with a smug smile on their faces, but today, they were genuinely in trouble. They repeatedly apologized. Even so, I could not forgive them. When it became clear they wouldn't leave despite being told numerous times, my husband threatened to call the police and they hastily left. After a discussion with my parents, my husband, and Brian, we decided to move out of this house as we couldn't guarantee they wouldn't return. In case of unforeseen circumstances, we moved in a high-security apartment. Everyone changed their phone numbers so we should no longer be reachable. Later, the compensation was safely paid and we were relieved. However, the three of them faced ruin. Luna was still behind bars, and even if she were to be released, it would be difficult for her to reintegrate into society given her name, face, and video had spread worldwide. Her parents were living on pension, but they couldn't afford to repay their debts and had to resort to working 6 days a week at part-time jobs. As for Luna, she seemed to be making money from working nights, but the patrons who knew about her past turned her into a joke. So she's been hopping from one place to another. They were out of money and barely scraping by, with daily fights over finances becoming